Start seeing people come in. Yeah.
Just gonna give it a minute or two and we'll get started.
Hi, folks. Welcome. Looks like people are starting to trickle in, so we're just giving it a minute for everybody's Zoom to catch up with clicking before we get started. We'll just give it another minute or two. Yeah. All right. So I'm just going to give a quick welcome to everybody. My name is Jill Reddish. I'm the co-founder of the Global Cannabis Network Collective, and we are here today to kick off our new GCNC Presents the Masterclass Series. We're very excited about this offering. We really hope this will bring some amazing value to the global cannabis industry. And without further ado, I would like to introduce my colleague, Deepak Anand, who is the official moderator for today. So he will be guiding us all through this amazing information, and I will be turning off my camera and kind of driving the presentation. So welcome to everybody. Thank you for being here, and Deepak, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jill. Appreciate everyone being here. I'd like to welcome everyone first and foremost to the GCNC webinar. Purpose of today's webinar is really to introduce GCNC's Masterclass Series offering that we've put together and have our Masterclass leaders really introduce themselves and their offerings to you. We're offering this Masterclass series in response to an industry need for both training and education. Among speaking to some of you who are members of GCNC as well as industry colleagues, it was clear to us that there was a huge demand for a need for training and education within the space. And we've got here some amazing leaders that have been involved in this topic for quite a while now and have some real good experience that they have behind them. So without further ado on my side, I'll now turn it over to both Pierre first and then Shannon and Nico thereafter to introduce themselves and their offerings and providing really an overview of sort of what their offerings are. This is meant to be very much an interactive session. There will be some Q&A as well. So if anyone has a question, please raise your hand or feel free to put it in the chat box and we'll be sure to accept those questions and also hopefully answer some of them live. So again, thank you very much for participating, both who are here virtually as well as people that will be listening to this later on. Shannon, Nico, and Pierre will also be providing you with their contact information. So if you have any questions and you're listening to this after the fact, you can actually reach out to them. So I'll hand it off to Pierre first to introduce himself and talk a little bit more about his specific offering, and then we'll get into a Q&A with Pierre right after.
Thank you very much, Jill. Thank you very much, Deepak. Good morning, good afternoon, and maybe good evening. My name is Pierre Colleen. I'm very much looking forward to introducing you to the Cannabis Industry 101 Masterclass. Jill, if you would be so kind as to call up the presentation. Okay, next slide, please, Jill. So, legalizing cannabis is really hard to do. There are only two countries that have been able to legalize cannabis at a federal level in the world: Canada, where I'm from, and Uruguay. When you look at it from the industry side, building sustainable cannabis industries is also proving to be a real challenge. You look at the experience of companies both in Canada and multi-state operators in the United States. Big launches, but really struggling to make a success of it. So why is this? I think there's probably three principal reasons. One is that even though we're 5 or 6 years in some states, in some places 10 years into the legalization of cannabis, a decision makers' understanding of cannabis is largely governed by myth, stigma, and fear. Second, we find that governments are struggling or unable to make changes to the regulatory environment governing the operations of legal cannabis companies, in spite of lessons learned and best practices. And third, I think people working within the industry are struggling with are challenged with the complexity, the regulatory and operational complexity of working in this industry. I'm trained as a lawyer. I have a legal background. I've spent the last 25 years of my career working in the world of public affairs, bringing new ways of doing things into government and industry. And I've spent the last 6 years at the intersection of government, law, and industry within the cannabis industry itself. And my experience has sort of convinced me of the fact that, education is really the key to many of the challenges facing the legal cannabis industry. Next slide, please, Jill. And that's why I've created the Cannabis Industry 101 Masterclass with the help and support of GCNC. The class is really designed to help companies and industry associations in emerging cannabis markets. This could be in a new state coming on board in the United States. It could be in a country looking to transition from medical cannabis into adult use cannabis. It could be in a country where CBD itself is legal, but not yet THC. So we've designed the masterclass to help educate decision makers in government and in industry, to prepare employees in the industry for success, and to help industry associations advance the right policy choices and regulatory perspectives, as well as for government to make the right decisions. So next slide, Jill, please. So today's presentation, I'm going to focus on 3 things. I'm going to talk to you about the audience, the Cannabis Industry 101 Masterclass audience. Who's this for? And how can you benefit from it, or your employees benefit from it, or your colleagues? What format? What's the format? How will we deliver this, the Cannabis Industry Masterclass 101? And then third, what is the content? What are we actually, what's the content that will be delivered? And then as Deepak and Jill, Deepak mentioned, we'll have a question and answer session at the end. I'm happy, Deepak, you're the moderator. So if someone wants to type in a question while I'm presenting, I'll slow down and I'd be happy to answer that question. Feel free to interject, Deepak. Next slide.
Sounds good.
Next slide, please, Jill. Oh. Jill, are you there? I apologize. She's one step ahead of me. So let's first talk about, from an audience perspective, the cannabis company audience, or companies in the supply chain. Oh, I apologize. So, okay. Apologies. So, cannabis is a new industry. Many of the people that come into this industry have never had experience working in the industry. Moreover, it's not consumer packaged goods. It's not beverage alcohol. It's a unique industry. It's also very heavily regulated. I remember when I first came into the industry, even though I had the benefit of a legal background, it was a real challenge to appreciate the operations within the regulatory environment, let alone one that was constantly evolving. I also recall the marketing team at one of the companies I worked at had hired an outside agency to develop a marketing campaign, only to have the agency come back with something that wasn't feasible given the regulatory environment. But I think, based on my experiences, I think, and industries and industry experience, there's an opportunity to really use the master class to help your employees understand and adapt to this new industry, to become productive earlier. I think the first 6 months in any new job or challenge, let alone in this industry. And then I think most importantly, to appreciate the interconnections between government, law, and industry. I think success in cannabis at an employee level requires the ability to understand the forest, to see the bigger picture, to understand the forest for the trees, to see the bigger picture. Next slide, Jill, please. Again, about the company audience and the supply chain audience. So legalization has been a real positive for governments and for society. It's created jobs, tax revenue. It's been good for social cohesion. It's provided quality controlled product. It's better for for health outcomes. But my experience in working with governments and helping them understand this new industry is that they really there's let's say just a lack of knowledge about cannabis for a whole host of reasons. So I think there's an opportunity for companies that want to build relationships with government, that want to influence the design or development of regulations in this new industry, to offer the masterclass or to use the masterclass to support their efforts with both governments, with stakeholders and civil society. I can recall when I was working on the legalization of cannabis in Canada, stakeholders played a key role in influencing government behavior on the outcome of the legislation governing legal cannabis in Canada, as well as civil society. So there's an opportunity, I think, to use this masterclass to help people appreciate, build on the lessons learned as they start to develop cannabis systems in new countries. Next slide, Jill. So I've spent the last 2.5 years of my career in cannabis helping the Cannabis Council of Canada, the industry association in Canada, really become the leading voice for the cannabis industry in Canada. I've been tasked with working on policy development, so bringing members together to develop consistent policies in response to emerging issues. I've held the pen on preparing the regulatory responses, and I've also been actively engaged with legislators and decision makers in government. And what I've learned over the course of these 2.5 years is it's a challenge for any industry association, let alone a cannabis industry association, to get its members, to engage its members. People are busy, to provide them with value, and to generate cohesion. Try and get everyone on the same page when it comes to a regulatory proposal on cannabis. So I think there's an opportunity for industry associations to use this professional development offering to support to use the masterclass to support your advocacy efforts, to offer engaging professional development to your members, and to earn revenue. This is another challenge that industry associations in cannabis face. We would be more than willing to work with you to develop a pricing model that provides a revenue share for industry associations that would be interested in bringing this to their members. Next slide, please. Okay, so what's the format? Cutting to the chase. So we've spoken about the audience who we've designed the masterclass for. We've spoken about the benefits. Now we're going to talk about the format. There's 6 core units in the masterclass. They're all 1 hour in length. We can customize the masterclass based on some of the issues, challenges, or needs that you might be facing either at a company level or at an industry level. Each 1 hour session is accompanied by a question and answer session with a cannabis expert, with someone who's worked in the industry in the particular field, in the subject matter related to the unit. They can be delivered single day, so 6 hours, 1 day in person, or or they can be delivered online over the course of many days. We can break down the 6 units into 1 hour sessions and spread them out over the course of a month or a course of a couple of weeks. We're flexible to accommodate your needs. Next slide, please, Jill. So let's talk now about the core units. So these have really been designed and selected to help people understand the interrelationship between government, regulation, and industry in the cannabis industry. I think really to succeed in this industry, I think one of my core narratives or core messages is that people need to appreciate the role that government plays. They need to understand the regulatory environment, and they need to understand how both of these influence the operating environment. So unit 1 is about the politics and policy of adult use cannabis. In this unit, we'll explore the political, social, economic issues connected to the legalization of cannabis. Unit 2, we'll look at the legislative and regulatory frameworks of legal cannabis, both in Canada and in some US states, to help people understand how legal cannabis is regulated. We'll talk about Unit 3 is going to be about medical cannabis systems. So we'll talk about their origin, their genesis, their operations, and their evolution in environments with legal adult use cannabis. Unit 4 is really about the commercial environment experience. In Unit 4, we'll look at really the in a sense the ups and downs of the legal cannabis industry as a result of legalization. This is really where we'll bring in business leaders that have experience, marketing leaders, sales leaders in legal cannabis. And we'll also bring data to the table that helps understand sales patterns and revenue patterns across different product categories in the industry. Next up is the Unit 5. We'll look at the cannabis supply chain. This has been one of the interesting developments in the cannabis industry, is the evolution or the emergence of a legal cannabis supply chain and its many players that support the success of the plant touching industry. We'll talk about its regulation. We'll talk about its relationship to the plant touching industry. And we'll talk to some experts that are themselves part of the supply chain supporting the legal cannabis industry. And then finally, lesson 6 is really about what are the lessons learned at the intersection of government, law, and industry in Canada. We've got 5 years of adult use experience under our belts, in some US states, even more. So let's get some industry experts with a global perspective around the table to help share their insights into the lessons learned from the operation of legal cannabis. Next slide, please, Jill. Give you an idea of some of the optional units that we've got on offer. We can talk about the anatomy and operations of a cannabis producer. You can really, this will help people from an operational perspective understand the kinds of roles within a cannabis company, within a cannabis touching company, how they connect, and how they've evolved over time. We've got another unit on the adult use cannabis consumer. At least many of us 5 years ago didn't really have at least a data informed or an evidence-based insight into the adult use cannabis consumer. So in this unit, we can look at the different products, the product categories, and what consumers are looking for and what the consumer experience has been. And then another unit, I really like this one, is really about the science, R&D, and innovation in cannabis. So we'll talk to leaders that are actively engaged in research and development, product development, innovation, basic science in cannabis, to pick their brains and to help you understand and the audience understand what's currently being done, where this is going, and what are the challenges ahead of this industry when it comes to innovation and product development. Coming up to the end now. One more slide, please, Jill. So what are the benefits that a participant could hope to will gain from the Cannabis Industry 101 Masterclass? As I've said before, we've designed this course to really help you, to help your employees, and to help people you're seeking to influence and engage see the forest for the trees, or understand the bigger picture and the interrelationships between government, law, and industry when it comes to legal cannabis. So participants in the class will understand the key issues connected to government and the legalization of cannabis, law and the regulation of cannabis, and industry in the cannabis business environment. And we'll also, throughout every unit, provide you with insights into future directions, challenges, and opportunities. Okay, so that's, I think I might have one more slide, Jill, with my contact information. Here I am. I'd be happy to chat anytime. We can set up a Zoom. You can send me a note to talk about your particular needs and how we might be able to respond to them. Really, I'll sign off by happy to take questions, but really appreciate, I wanted to thank GCNC, Deepak and Jill for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'd very much welcome the opportunity, and I want to thank you for sitting in to hear about the Cannabis Industry 101 Masterclass offering. Thank you. End of presentation, Jill.
Thanks, Pierre. Appreciate that informative discussion and also updates. Just wanted to ask you really quickly, the training solutions that you're providing, who are they targeted towards? In other words, who should be attending these training and education events and seminars that you have?
Thanks, Deepak. I am well, I understand the operations and have worked within the cannabis industry. My real focus is on the front end of cannabis legalization and regulation. So I think the audience here is people who are in countries or in jurisdictions looking to legalize cannabis or going through the legalization experience, because we can really help them understand and get it right. So it would be companies, Deepak, industry associations in countries that are exploring the legalization of either medical or adult use cannabis. That's, I think, the key target audience. Can't hear you, Deepak.
Apologies. I was going to say, why is it important for companies to invest in education and training, and where are you seeing people coming to you from for these sorts of activities? Yeah.
So one of the first slides I use when I talk about the politics and the policy of legal cannabis is I'll take a publicly listed cannabis company and I'll show its stock price at the start of legalization, and I'll draw the graph, and the graph will show its current stock price. And what the story told there is that legal cannabis is a real challenge for companies in the industry. So I think the key message we've got here is that if you can help, if you can help set up the right conditions for legal cannabis in your country, in your economy, you've got a much better chance of avoiding that downward stock price. This is, in a sense, very difficult to change the rules once they're set. So this is an opportunity to really understand those rules and get them right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pierre. Just a reminder, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A box and we'll get to it, or feel free to put it in the chat or even raise your hands. This is very much intended to be a free-flowing discussion. Claire, did you have a question? I see you. Okay, you know what? Let's just switch to Shannon and Nico. Shannon, I'll let you go through your presentation.
Okay, Jill, if you could bring ours up. While we're waiting for Jill, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Shannon Clute, half of Hashtag Group Consulting. I've been in the cannabis sector since about 2015, when a team of us in the academic sector decided to offer a commercial cannabis program at a university. The first of its kind really in North America, and Deepak can attest to that, he was part of that group. Since then, I was recruited to be part of a startup called Cannabis Compliant Inc., which ended up being one of the largest consulting firms in Canada through the legalization process. In that role at Cannabis Compliance Inc. or CCI, I was the director responsible for training and education for the state. This is a highly regulated industry with no real training. So I spent the last 7-8 years doing that, just developing programs for the industry. Our firm was acquired by Deloitte in 2019, and we worked under the Deloitte moniker for a couple of years before Nico and I decided to venture off into our own and start our own consulting firm. So with that, I will let Nico introduce himself.
Perfect. Thank you, Shannon. And first, thank you to Jill and Deepak and the GCNC team for this opportunity. We're very, very happy to be partnering, to be doing these offerings with them. So I am a co-founder of Hache Clute Consulting. So the first part of Hache Clute. And I've been working with Shannon for quite a while. A little bit of background of myself. I am a horticulturist with 20 years experience. My career started in large propagation greenhouse, mainly propagating vegetables, flowers, cut flowers. We did a lot of potted crops as well. I then subsequently moved to forestry, where I was managing a large forestry operation growing 24 million seedlings a year. I did that for a few years, and once the cannabis legalization came to Canada, I joined Organigram as director of operations. They're one of the first licenses in Canada, and they're still operating today. I focus on operational effectiveness, improvements, and trying to push the boundaries a little bit. So that's a little bit about myself. Jill, off to the next slide, please. So as Shannon mentioned, we kind of have the same background in the last 5 years through Cannabis Compliance Inc. and Deloitte. So Cannabis Compliance Inc. was one of the largest consulting firm initially for the licensing and the big boom of cannabis in Canada. I was also director there. I was leading the cultivation and security teams and worked very, very closely with Shannon to develop a lot of training material and bring experts to the table and to these conversations. Through the work that we've done from past and through our collective work, we have seen over 150 different visited and seen 150 different horticulture operations from cannabis and non-cannabis operations. So a little bit of everything, all the way to outdoor field production. And within our consulting, we actually were involved in developing, designing, supporting over 225 different cannabis facilities in Canada, Europe, Asia, Africa, and South America. So in line, why I want to explain all this is how we come to this training is we really bring together the operational side of hands-on experience working in the ditch with the educational side and curriculum development and support that comes from Shannon's world. So that's how we have joined forces and now are getting to the next level and into our training and our offering. Next slide, please, Jill. Some of the work that we've done within the industry, we've trained hundreds of people with all ranks of production in the cannabis, from the year QA to trimmers to the C-suite to anybody in between, from maintenance folks. We've done online and in-person training. That's something that we pride ourselves, because in-person training definitely has a much bigger impact of being hands-on there. I always like to say that I like to go sniff around in the facility so that I can really, really hone in. We've retrained over 600 employees to meet a regulatory requirement for a relicensing. So that was a very, very big project that Shannon undertook. Within academia, we played a very big role in designing one of the first cannabis training program. I say I'll give most of the credit to Shannon on this one. I participated lightly and was fortunate enough to deliver some of this program. And we also worked with the University of Guelph in Canada, where we offered an in-person, very intensive 1 week course for industry folks specifically that did not want to go take full academia courses. So this was given at a university level, in the classroom and within the greenhouse operation there as well. And then with government work, some of the government work we've done is really educate some of these government boards, whether it was on the municipal or provincial side of things, on legal framework, on quality aspects, on retail aspects, how to communicate properly with the retail and how to properly develop our sales system. So really, this is at the very, very beginning of the legalization on the recreational side in Canada. Next slide, please. And I think this is off to Shannon.
For me. So who will benefit from this training? Really anyone at an organization, from the senior executives down. I think choosing to invest in training is a cultural thing at a company, and it really flows downhill. I don't think anyone's ever finished learning or honing their skills, if you will. Like a good example is, regular tomato greenhouse with like Dutch growers that have been doing this for hundreds of years, still bringing consultants to really hone their skill set. And I think that that's something this industry really needs. I think that we don't know everything and we're still learning, and even Nico and I are still learning, and we're tweaking our materials to really incorporate best practices as we've seen them be deployed within the industry. So all of our training was built on compliance. So really with compliance in mind, making sure that, you're doing things that are allowable within the regulated industry. And we're not training you per se on like becoming a quality assurance person, because that requires most likely a science degree. But what we're trying to do is to fill that gap on the cannabis knowledge that's missing in order for you to be successful in this industry. Like Nico touched on, we train senior board members and executives that don't traditionally come from the cannabis space, really helping them understand the vernacular, understand how this culture, which is there's a very underlying culture in the cannabis space for anyone who worked in it for a long period of time, needs to understand in order to move forward and be successful. Next slide, please. So why is training important? I could talk about this all day, and I'm sure a lot of you already know this. But it keeps employees informed about regulatory changes, including legal practices. Retention is a big issue in the industry. It's something that we hear from really established producers having difficulty keeping and retaining staff. Obviously, succession planning is a big deal, especially in the Canadian market. Your quality assurance people are responsible for signing off on any piece of product that moves outside your facility. Without that person, nothing moves. So if you don't have somebody waiting to come up who's one, security cleared, but also is trained to do that type of work, you could be sitting on product for 6 months to a year. With respect to retention, I mean, there's lots of stats out there, and I'm sure you've seen some of them, but employees who are trained and have their employer invest in them typically stay 30 to 50% longer than those who are not. With respect to bringing consistency and standardization of process, it reduced your risk. Obviously, it reduced your costs because there are less mistakes when there's more standardization of process. Good training is a really important thing versus train the trainer, if you will. I like the idea of train the trainer in some aspects, but as you grow, it's just not sustainable, and it becomes a game of telephone for you. Those are old enough to know the game that we used to play when I was younger. Where the message gets repeated time over time, but it loses some of its effectiveness. So that's sort of what I mean when it brings consistency and standardization of processes, to have really good training that's consistent. With respect to refining and challenging, that's something that Nico and I like to do. We like to push the boundaries of what's possible, not just what you're doing in the moment, but what you could actually be doing going forward. and then increased job satisfaction. People always inherently want to do a good job, so giving them the skills and tools to do that increases productivity, empowers them to make decisions, less supervision is generally required, and it allows them to take on new tasks and ultimately brings in efficiencies into the facility, which will then increase profits and efficiency. So I'll let Nico jump in here too. This is a general overview of some of our training modules. I won't read through all of them, but we'll make sure that this presentation is available to everyone. I'll send it out with our contact information after the session. But basically, you can see there's 3 buckets of training. We have general interest, and general interest meaning anyone can take any of these and it will find value in them. Role-based training is really specific to certain roles in the commercial space, so quality assurance, master grower, production manager. And then there's specific skill-based training that it could be taken by multiple different roles, but is specific to the commercial space as well. As Pierre mentioned too, we can also customize any of the training that is here to be relevant specifically to your facility. We can also develop any new curriculum that you'd like to do. That's my background, so I can do that, no problem. Nico, do you want to touch on just quickly the 2 new courses that we just added with respect to predictive growing?
Yeah, perfect. So as you can see here, we have different levels of courses, like Shannon just explained, from entry levels all the way to higher level management kind of planning. And a couple of new models that we've added is the predictive growing on the bottom of the first bucket in general interest. Predictive growing and collecting and understanding production data, essentially changing our industry to what a regular production and supply chain industry looks like, which is on-demand production, understanding your sales targets and working backwards to do your planning, your production planning, not grow it and they will come and then I'll sell my product somewhere at some point. It's really taking your horticultural best practices in planning and production and bringing it to the cannabis world. That's something that we see definitely in Canada that's probably a little bit lacking in regards to that on the planning side, but there are a lot of factors that play into as well. So aligning your production with your market segment. So falls into a little bit the same as above, but really understanding your production segment. So this is not a high level of a course. It should be for most of the operations should know this. So the C-suite should understand what their goals are and how they communicate that down. And so the production needs to be tailored according to what that market or that sought after brand is. So this is really making sure that the production and the processes are tailored around what the company is looking for. So yeah, those are exciting new courses that we, like Shannon mentioned, we keep developing new things and keep educating ourselves. This is by engagement with the industry on other platforms that we do. So this all developed from that. And once again, I just want to highlight that these can be delivered virtually, they can be delivered in person. There's many different ways that can be done, and the customizing of it all. So yeah, that's a little bit about everything there, I believe. Is that our last slide? I think that's our last slide.
Yeah. Over to you, Deepak.
So thank you, everyone. Yeah, Deepak.
Thanks for that, Shannon, Nico. Very, very informative, and greatly appreciate all of your insights and certainly a lot of knowledge and experience that you bring with you. So thank you for that. Just a couple of questions from my side as I was listening to your presentation. Can you advise sort of people listening in what some of the pitfalls have been because companies might not have invested in education and training when perhaps they should have?
You want me to go? Oh, for the extreme cases, I've seen companies lose their license from employees not understand the regulatory framework properly or how it's applied to their facility. We've seen people have their brand eroded away because their quality isn't consistent and it isn't maintained. So consumers aren't buying the same product batch after batch after batch, which, I mean, it's really hard to get shelf space in Canada. If you get shelf space, you need to maintain it. And if you don't have that brand consistency, you're not going to be able to. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, and to keep going a little bit on the production side of things, there's always new technology, new research being done, especially in the cannabis world, to push the envelope. So to be stuck in your ways and not understanding the bigger picture can sometimes harm a company by keeping them at one place and having other companies or competitors kind of surpass them because they are keeping up with new trends or new things that are being developed. So that I think is an important factor, and to make sure that you understand these nuances as well. When somebody talks about a new product, do you have the right understanding to have that discussion and to explore these things? I'm talking as an example for changing your lights. Does that make sense in your operation? Do you have the training for that?
Thank you. That's extremely helpful. And then just the last question, that I really had as I was listening to this was, what makes your courses different from some others that might be out there? Of course, there's quite a few different courses and education events out there. So how do you guys differentiate yourselves from that?
I've seen a wide array of courses, and not to say that they're all bad, because they certainly aren't. There's some good ones out there. I think it doesn't hurt that my background is in academic work and developing curriculum. I have a master's of education. I think too, having Nico's background, have boots on the ground, learning from doing is really important. We've also developed a lot of our training programs with in consult with other industry leaders who brought either their personal experience doing the roles that we've developed a training program for, or they've supervised those roles. So really understanding what needs to be done at a facility, what are the best practices, what are the pitfalls, what have we learned from over the last few years in Canada. I think that those are things that we bring to bear that hopefully make our programs really good.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Go ahead,
I'd have to do that. Thank you.
Yeah. No, listen, thank you very much. I think this has been super informative. I want to thank everyone for joining us, those that logged in, and also those that will be listening to this after the fact. If you have any questions around the GCNC Masterclass offering, don't hesitate to reach out to Jill, Shannon, Nico, or Pierre. We'd be more than happy to help you out and give you some further information. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time, and Shannon, Nico, and Pierre really for putting together some fantastic presentations and informing GCNC members and our audience about your offering. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.